The Nexus station was supposed to be the heart of an eternal empire. Now it's a floating grave, its lights extinguished forever. For decades, the Galactic Council dismissed humanity as soft idealists, never suspecting their patience was a countdown. "We've been patient long enough" was not a plea, it was a launch key. At 1400 hours, every system failed. The rain ended not with a flash, but with a blackout that will never lift. The Galactic Council ruled 1,000 star systems from Nexus Station, an unchallenged monument to bureaucratic power. Humanity, the youngest member, was treated as a soft, naive species. But behind the polite smiles, a silent war was being constructed, not with weapons but with code and patience. The real question the elders never asked: what were the humans building while the council slept? To understand how a civilization that ruled for 2,000 years could vanish in a single silent second, you have to go back to humanity's first day on the council floor. They arrived not with warships but with freighters, engineers, and a reputation for building cheap, reliable infrastructure. The elder species, the Vornath, the Silicon Hive, the Krell Ascendancy, saw them as a useful labor force. Polite, eager to please, never pushing back against the humiliating tariffs and territorial restrictions the council imposed. But the humans had something the elders lacked: patience born of a long evolutionary history of outlasting predators. They didn't complain when the council forced them into substandard trade lanes. They didn't protest when their colony ships were quarantined for decades over fabricated health concerns. They just kept building power grids, data relays, life support matrices. Every piece of technology the council adopted to maintain its sprawling bureaucracy was quietly, systematically sourced from human contractors because it was 30% cheaper and twice as efficient. The key was always in the firmware. Human engineers embedded a ghost protocol so deeply in the foundational code that even the most advanced Vornath cyberanalysts never detected it. It wasn't a virus. It was a feature, dormant until it received a specific, seemingly innocuous handshake signal. For 67 years, the backdoor sat sleeping in every critical system aboard Nexus Station. The arrangement might have lasted another century if not for the colonists on. The Council's latest decree, Resolution 984, classified 3 fringe human worlds as strategically contested zones, effectively authorizing their liquidation by the Krell Ascendancy's military arm. The humans called them settlements. The Council called them acceptable losses. When the vote passed with unanimous support from every elder species, Earth's ambassador, Ilara Vance, stood up, closed her briefing folder, and walked out of the Grand Chamber without a single word of protest. The Vornath delegation chuckled. They assumed the human had finally learned her place. They didn't see what was happening in the shadows. Within minutes, Ambassador Vance's private quantum channel broadcast a 5-word message to every human captain, engineer, and contractor across the galaxy. "We've been patient long enough." It wasn't a cry for help. It was the handshake. Across the station, a trillion lines of dormant code stirred. The countdown had begun. At exactly 1400 hours Galactic Standard Time, the heart of the Galactic Council simply stopped. It began with the lights. Every corridor, every docking bay, every crystalline spire of Nexus Station flickered once, twice, and then plunged into absolute darkness. For a full 10 seconds, the only sound was the confused clicking of a billion mandibles and vocalizers as the elder species tried to understand what had happened. Then the life support grids failed. Oxygen scrubbers spun down. Thermal regulators went silent. The station, a city of 3 million permanent residents, began to cool rapidly toward the void's natural temperature. What made it terrifying was not the chaos but the silence. The Silicon Hive, a species of silicon-based beings, had integrated their neural network with the station's infrastructure centuries ago. They didn't scream when the data cores died. They just went still, their collective consciousness severed in a single instant. Across their hive ships, millions of silicon workers froze mid-task, their hive mind erased. The Krell Ascendancy warships docked at the station fared no better. Their weapons grids, built on human power regulators, collapsed. Their engines, reliant on human-engineered plasma containment, went cold. Every single Krell dreadnought, the terror of a dozen conquered species, became a floating sarcophagus. The Vorneth High Archon, a creature of immense psionic power, reached out with her mind to rally the Council, but even the psionic amplifiers that boosted her abilities had been sourced from human factories. The amplifier backfired, sending a psychic shockwave that incapacitated every Vorneth within 100 kilometers. The cascade was not random. It was surgical. Human engineers had not simply sabotaged the station. They had mapped exactly which systems each species depended on most. The Vorneth had their psionics neutralized. The Krell were disarmed. The Silicant were erased. And the dozens of lesser species who had voted for Resolution 984 found their life support failing in precise order of their council vote. The message was unmistakable. The only systems that remained operational were the emergency backup generators that powered the station's internal communication network. And on that network, a single channel opened. Ambassador Alara Vance's face appeared on every screen that still functioned, her expression calm, her voice steady. She did not gloat. She did not threaten. She simply delivered the terms. 67 years ago, humanity came to this council seeking friendship. You offered us subjugation. We accepted because patience is our nature. But patience has limits. Every power relay, every life support matrix, every weapon system aboard this station was built by human hands and contains a failsafe only we control. Nexus Station is now a sealed tomb. You have exactly 1 hour to broadcast an unconditional surrender and revoke Resolution 984. If you fail to comply, the next stage will not be a blackout. It will be a venting of every atmosphere on this station directly into space. But the deeper horror, the one that would haunt the Council for generations, was still unfolding. In the chaos, the humans had already executed the true operation. While every elder species focused on the dying station, a fleet of human civilian freighters disguised as scrap haulers slipped past the Council's orbital defense grid, a grid, it should be noted, that had been installed by the same human contractors, and reached the 3 condemned colonies on. The colonists were not there. They had been evacuated 18 months earlier, replaced by automated decoys that broadcast fake life signs. The genocide the Council had authorized was a phantom. The humans had simply waited for the decree to be passed, knowing it would trigger the final handshake. That revelation changed everything. The Council had not been outgunned. They had been outthought. Their entire strategic doctrine, built on overwhelming force, had been rendered obsolete by a species that had never fired a shot. Across the galaxy, the news spread like wildfire. 100 subjugated worlds, long forced to kneel before the Council, began to whisper. If humanity could do this, what other chains were waiting to be broken? But the plan had a flaw. A single Vorneth delegate, Junior Archon Pelagius, had been on a shuttle during the blackout, unaware of the coup until his psionic link to his staff went dead. He was now racing back to the station with a desperate countermeasure. He knew something the humans did not. The original human lead engineer who designed the failsafe had defected to the Vorneth 5 years ago, and Pelagius had a backdoor of his own. Junior Archon Pelagius was not a warrior. He was a bureaucrat, a master of legislative minutiae who had spent centuries navigating the Council's labyrinthine political structures. But as his shuttle screamed through hyperspace toward Nexus Station, he clutched a data crystal containing the only thing that mattered anymore: a kill switch. The crystal held the work of Dr. Henrik Vasquez, the human engineer who had designed the Ghost Protocol. 5 years earlier, Vorneth intelligence had finally turned him, or so they believed. Vasquez had handed over what he claimed was a master override, a backdoor that could reset every infected system and purge the human failsafe entirely. Pelagius had never fully trusted it, but now he had no choice. He transmitted the activation key on an encrypted channel directly into the station's surviving relay array. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, deep in the maintenance core, a secondary processor stack that had remained dormant for decades hummed to life. The Vorneth psionic amplifier grid, the one humanity had so carefully neutralized, began to glow again with a faint violet light. Across the station, emergency vents cycled, oxygen flowed once more, and the terrified survivors allowed themselves a whisper of hope. In the council chamber, the High Archon, still reeling from the psychic backlash, reached out with her mind and sensed the override spreading like a cleansing fire. She broadcast a single thought to her kind: "We have the humans now." But on the bridge of the human freighter Grayson Asterisk, which had been hiding in the station's shadow, Ambassador Alara Vance watched the same sensor feeds and smiled. She turned to her tactical officer, a weathered woman named Captain Li Chen, and said, "He did it. The pigeon took the bait." What Pelagius had just activated was not a reset. It was a dead man's switch. Dr. Vasquez had not defected. He had been a triple agent, feeding the Vornath exactly the countermeasure humanity needed them to deploy. The override was a logic bomb. Once triggered, it did not restore the station's systems. It began overriding every piece of hardware with a permanent, irreversible kill command. And because the Council had standardized their entire military infrastructure on the same human-built architecture, the signal began propagating beyond the station, traveling along the secure command channels the Vornath fleet relied on. Within minutes, every dreadnought, every sensor array, every defensive platform in the sector began to brick itself. The Council was not just being humiliated, it was being systematically disarmed forever. The High Archon felt the change a fraction of a second before it happened. The returning psionic link that had given her hope suddenly twisted into a white-hot spike of agony. The override didn't just fail, it weaponized the amplifier network, turning it into a psionic scrambler that sent uncontrollable feedback into the minds of every Vornath attuned to it. Across a dozen star systems, Vornath operatives collapsed, their neural pathways overloaded. The Council's greatest asset, their hive mind coordination, was now a liability. In the station's command bunker, a Krell general named Threx, who had long distrusted the humans but also the Vornath, saw the truth. The Elders had been played. The humans had banked on the Council's arrogance, predicting that they would seek a countermeasure rather than accept the initial terms. The entire blackout had been a setup for this moment. Ambassador Vance opened the channel again. Her face appeared on every screen still functional, which now numbered far fewer. "You had 1 hour to surrender unconditionally. Instead, you chose to betray us with a weapon you stole from our own engineer. You thought you were fighting a war. You never understood this was a lesson. Dr. Vasquez is alive, by the way. He sends his regards." She paused, letting the silence hang. "The kill command cannot be undone, but I will offer you one final chance to save what remains. Broadcast your unconditional surrender now, or the next phase will not be a disarming. It will be the complete thermal shutdown of every station sector, starting with the nursery habitats." The nursery habitats. The Vornath, Krell, and Silicon all raised their young in artificial environments on Nexus, a symbol of shared governance. Now it was a hostage. Threx knew when a battle was lost. He was a soldier, not a politician, but even he understood that the Council had been shattered not by superior firepower, but by a strategy so patient it had become indistinguishable from time itself. He looked at the terrified face of the Vornath Archon, whose mind was still reeling from the psionic attack, and he made the call that would alter history. He keyed the surrender broadcast with his own military codes. The word spread like a shockwave. Across the station, the lights remained off, but the emergency systems that Ambassador Vance allowed to function began broadcasting the unconditional surrender of the Galactic Council. On 1,000 worlds, the subjugated species who had been watching the drama unfold via smuggled human communication relays saw their oppressors kneel. The silent cascade was complete, and the humans, the species so long dismissed as soft idealists, had not fired a single plasma bolt. Now came the reckoning. The surrender was only the beginning. In the cold silence of a powerless Nexus station, the Council members who remained alive had to confront not just their defeat, but the terrifying realization that everything they thought they knew about power was wrong. and that reckoning would test humanity's next move in a way no one expected. The unconditional surrender of the Galactic Council did not end with a grand ceremony or a formal signing of terms. It ended in darkness. In the cold, silent corridors of Nexus Station, delegates who had once commanded the fates of 1,000 worlds now shivered in emergency thermal blankets, their psionic links shattered, their fleets drifting dead in space. Ambassador Alara Vance did not descend to the station in a conqueror's shuttle. She sent a single message. A new constitutional summit would convene on a neutral human colony world, and every species, including the former subject races, would send representatives. The elders would attend not as rulers, but as equals stripped of their veto powers. It was not a negotiation. It was an orientation. The summit on Proxima Haven lasted 47 days. What emerged from it no historian had ever predicted. Humanity refused to become the new council. They refused to occupy the station, to inherit the empire, to claim the spoils of a silent war that had taken 67 years to execute. Instead, they proposed a complete dissolution of centralized galactic governance. The 1,000 worlds would be free to form regional coalitions, to govern themselves, with a single binding condition. No species would ever again be subjugated. And to enforce this, humanity offered not its warships, but its engineers. Every world would receive the infrastructure to be self-sufficient, with the same fail-safe technology that had brought down the Council embedded deep within it. They called it the Parity Protocol. The message was unmistakable. No one would ever build another Nexus, and no one would ever need to tear one down again. The reaction among the former subject species was not immediate gratitude. It was disbelief. For centuries they had dreamed of retribution, of watching their oppressors suffer as they had suffered. The Krell generals expected execution. The Vornath archons prepared for psychic reconditioning camps, but humanity offered none of that. Ambassador Vance addressed the assembly with words that would be inscribed on every memorial to that day. We did not do this for revenge. Revenge would have been easy. We did this because patience taught us something the Council never learned. Dominance is brittle. A single flaw in a single system brought down an empire. The only stable order is one built on trust, not fear. You will not trust us if we become what we destroyed, so we will not. But the final surprise was yet to come. Dr. Henrik Vasquez, the engineer who had designed the Ghost Protocol and then walked willingly into the Vornath intelligence's trap, stepped forward during the final session. He was an old man now, his face lined, his hands trembling slightly. He revealed that the logic bomb he had designed was never a dead man's switch. It was a teacher. The blackout was always intended to be irreversible, but the fail-safe that the Vornath had tried to activate, the one that caused the psionic cascade, was a deliberate illusion. It forced the Council to confront their own desperation, to understand that their entire framework of control was built on assumptions humanity had quietly disproven. Vasquez ended his statement with a single sentence. You thought we were patient because we were weak. We were patient because we were designing a future where no one would need to be patient again. When the summit concluded, Nexus Station remained as it was on the day of the blackout, a cold, dark monument. The surviving inhabitants were evacuated, and the station was placed under preservation order as a historical marker. It would orbit its star for another 1,000 years, its corridors silent, its command center dead. A warning, not a trophy. Humanity's fleets withdrew to their own space. The former subject worlds began the messy, difficult work of self-governance. And the Galactic Council, that gleaming engine of interstellar domination, became what its architects had always feared most, a memory fading into the dark. The silent blackout of Nexus Station was never a military victory. It was a proof of concept. Humanity had spent 67 years waiting, not because they were afraid, but because they understood something the elder species had forgotten. The most powerful weapon in the universe is not a plasma cannon. It is patience that outlasts arrogance. The Council fell without a single shot fired, its entire empire rendered inert by the very infrastructure it had greedily adopted. That was the true humiliation. Not defeat, but irrelevance. And yet the question that lingers, the one that keeps diplomats and historians arguing to this day, is whether humanity could have done the same thing to any other power. Could the parity protocol be trusted? Could a species capable of such methodical, silent destruction ever truly be peaceful? The humans never denied the danger. They advertised it. Every world that accepted their infrastructure accepted the silent truth. If you ever become what the Council was, your lights will go out too. It is the ultimate deterrent built not on threat but on demonstration. So the galaxy now watches, half in awe, half in unease, as humanity returns to its quiet corner of space, building ships that never leave their lanes, writing code that will outlive empires. The Council is gone, but the silence it left behind is not empty. It is filled with a single, unspoken message: be patient, be kind, or be dark. If this story of quiet defiance and long-game strategy kept you listening, do us the favor of hitting subscribe. We tell the stories of empires that crumble not with a bang, but with a whisper. And we have many more to share. Thanks for watching, and as always, keep your systems updated and your patience sharper than your sword.